പ്രിയപ്പെട്ടവരെ നമസ്കാരം. ഞാൻ മുഹമ്മദ് മുബാറക് മാസ്റ്റർ. എംനോട്സ് പഠന ഗ്രൂപ്പിന്റെ സ്വീകാര്യത നിങ്ങൾക്ക് എല്ലാവർക്കും മനസ്സിലായിട്ടുണ്ടാവുമല്ലോ. എംനോട്സ് സീഡ് ട്രസ്റ്റ് കേരളയ്ക്ക് വേണ്ടി സെന്റർ ഫോർ ബിഹേവിയറൽ സയൻസിലൂടെ ഇത്തരത്തിലുള്ള പഠന ഗ്രൂപ്പ് സംഘടിപ്പിക്കുന്നത് ലക്ഷക്കണക്കിന് വിദ്യാർത്ഥിനികൾക്ക് ഗുണപ്രദമാണ് എന്നറിഞ്ഞതിൽ അത്യധികം സന്തോഷമുണ്ട്. ഞാൻ മുഹമ്മദ് മുബാറക് മാസ്റ്റർ ഇന്ന് സൈക്കോളജി, കൗൺസിലിംഗ്, സോഷ്യൽ വർക്ക് വിഭാഗത്തിലെ ബിരുദം, ബിരുദാനന്തര ബിരുദം, പോസ്റ്റ് ഗ്രാജുവേഷൻ ഡിപ്ലോമ, സർട്ടിഫിക്കറ്റ് പ്രോഗ്രാമുകൾ ഇവയിൽ പഠിക്കുന്ന മെന്റൽ ഹെൽത്ത് സർവീസസ് ഇൻ ഇന്ത്യ, റൈറ്റ്സ്, ലോസ് ആൻഡ് ഫ്യൂച്ചർ എന്ന വിഷയത്തെ ആസ്പദമാക്കിയുള്ള ഡിബേറ്റ്, ഒരു ഡിസ്കഷൻ ക്ലാസ് ആണ് ഇന്ന് നടക്കുന്നത്. താങ്കൾക്കും അതുപോലെ തന്നെ ഈ സമൂഹത്തിലെ എല്ലാ മെന്റൽ ഹെൽത്ത് സർവീസസ് പ്രൊഫഷണൽസിനും ഒരുപാട് ഗുണം ചെയ്യുന്ന ഈ വീഡിയോ താങ്കൾക്ക് ഒരുപാട് പ്രയോജനകരമായിരിക്കും എന്നുള്ളതിൽ സംശയമില്ല. ഇത്തരത്തിലുള്ള വീഡിയോസ് പരമാവധി ഷെയർ ചെയ്യാനും ഒപ്പം തന്നെ എംനോട്സ് സബ്സ്ക്രൈബ് ചെയ്ത് തുടരെ ഇത്തരത്തിലുള്ള വീഡിയോസ് പഠന ഗ്രൂപ്പിലൂടെ ലഭ്യമാക്കാൻ സബ്സ്ക്രൈബ് ചെയ്യുകയും നോട്ടിഫിക്കേഷനിൽ ഓൾ ബട്ടൺ ക്ലിക്ക് ചെയ്യുകയും മറ്റ് സുഹൃത്തുക്കൾക്ക് ഷെയർ ചെയ്തു കൊടുക്കുകയും മാത്രമല്ല നിങ്ങളുടെ വിലയേറിയ അഭിപ്രായം, കമന്റ്സ്, അത് പോസിറ്റീവ് കമന്റ്സ് ആയിക്കോട്ടെ നെഗറ്റീവ് കമന്റ്സ് ആയിക്കോട്ടെ, കമന്റ്സ് അറിയിക്കുകയും ഇഷ്ടപ്പെട്ടിട്ടുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ ലൈക്ക് ചെയ്യാനും ഇഷ്ടപ്പെട്ടില്ല എങ്കിൽ തീർച്ചയായും ഡിസ്ലൈക്ക് ചെയ്യാനും നിങ്ങൾക്ക് എന്നോട് സംസാരിക്കണമെന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ ഡിസ്ക്രിപ്ഷൻ ബോക്സിൽ നൽകിയിട്ടുള്ള നമ്പറിൽ എന്നെ വാട്സപ്പിലൂടെ ബന്ധപ്പെടാവുന്നതാണ്. എന്തായാലും നമുക്ക് ഇന്നത്തെ പരിപാടിയിലേക്ക് പോകാം. വെൽക്കം ടു എംനോട്സ്. Now we discussing mental health services in India, rights, laws and future. Once again, thanks to watching.
Hello viewers, welcome to the program on Mental Health Services in India, Rights, Laws and Future. The School of Social Sciences of IGNOU brings you this program. This is a part of the PG Diploma in Mental Health, that is PG DMH program, offered by the Discipline of Psychology under School of Social Sciences. Today's program relates to your course MPC 054 of the PG DMH. So we have with us today Professor Sridhar Sarma, an eminent psychiatrist who has vast experience in the field of mental health. Professor Sarma is the senior consultant psychiatrist in Puspavati Singhania Research Institute, PSRI, New Delhi. He is also the emeritus professor, National Academy of Medical Sciences and the Institute of Human Behavior and Allied Sciences, New Delhi. So welcome Professor Sarma to this program.
Thank you.
So viewers, today's program will focus on the mental health services in India. It will discuss the rights, laws and the future related to the mental health care and services in India. So the objectives of the program are, today we will discuss about the mental health and mental illness and rights of persons with mental illness. We will also discuss about the laws and policies that are available here in our country with regard to the mental health and mental illness, and we will also discuss about the mental health services in India, and finally we will discuss on the future prospects and the future scope of mental health care and services that are available in our country in India. Now before we discuss with Professor Sarma further about the mental health services and policies in India, their status, scope and future, let us now briefly discuss what do we mean by mental health. When we talk about mental health, it is not merely the absence of mental disorder or mental illness, it goes beyond that. So the WHO, World Health Organization, it has defined mental health as follows. It is a state of well-being in which the individual recognizes his or her own abilities, and can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make contribution to his or her community. So the definition emphasizes productivity, effectiveness, and contribution to the society, to the community. So we can say that the definition given by the WHO with regard to the mental health, it emphasizes the individual functioning in an optimal way. Now, do the available mental health services that are there in India, they help fulfill these aims or goals outlined by the WHO? So, Professor Sarma, what is your view on this?
First, I would like to elaborate on the point what is mental health.
Yeah.
Mental health is a state of physical, mental and social well-being. When we talk about well-being, it's a positive aspect and not it's merely the absence of a disease. The second part, which is important, the mental health is a part but not apart from the health.
Yes.
So whenever we talk about mental health, because we can't divide into mental health and social health and physical health, but they are part and they influence each other.
When we talk about mental health, it is on a continuum. Okay, it ranges from mental health to mental illness. So in between, the range is there, so we can place the individual. So our focus, the aim of the mental health care and services, it should be focusing on the mental health aspect. From the mental illness, we can gradually move towards the mental wellness aspect. Now, children who have mental health problems are more likely to grow into adolescence having mental health problems, and also then to the adulthood stage with mental health problems. Hence, it is very crucial to have preventive measures as well as intervention measures at each stage. According to the WHO, 1 in 4 persons suffer from mental illness. Mental disorders account for 12% of the global burden of diseases and likely to increase to 15% by 2020. In this context, it is very crucial to first think of the rights of the persons who have mental illness. So, Professor Sarma, do the persons with mental illness have all the rights that the normal people have?
Yes, positively, I would like to clarify that the foundations of the modern ideas of universal human rights are rooted in the humanistic philosophy of 18th century.
Yes.
The concepts have developed from the theme that all are created equal and are independent. Later, these concepts were reflected in the Universal Declaration of the Human Rights Convention or Declaration adopted by the United Nations in 1948, which incorporates the two basic concepts about the nature of the human rights. Firstly, the certain rights are what we call a natural or inalienable and included the concept of individual liberty and included the right of life, liberty and pursuit of happiness. This concept extended to include right to religion, speech, to own property and freedom of thought and conscience. The second concept of human rights is social entitlement. That is the responsibility of the state and society to guarantee not only freedom of opportunity to its citizens, but also achievement of results. These concepts encompass societal entitlement being included right in education and right of health. Right to health is dealt within several articles and specifically in Article 12 of the Convention, which recognizes the right of everyone to enjoy the highest level of a standard of physical, mental and social well-being. It may be necessary to clarify that most of the human rights are negative, so they cannot be protected by law. Health is a right of different kind. It is a positive. The right is not enforceable by law. It places obligation on society that none could hope to meet, but there is obligation on society to provide and protect this right. Once I have stated that how civilized a nation is should depend not only how much technologically, economically they are advanced, but it would depend what is the attitude of the society and the nation to those who can't look after. And that is, one of the very nice way of giving about the rights of the people on mental illness. Hence, health and mental health as a right could be put at a higher value in much the same way that justice is exposed a value about the mere rule of the law. Unfortunately, many developing countries, including India, there is no effective promotion and protection of mentally ill. Rather, they suffer from many discriminations and indifference and neglect to the patients, which there is a rejection, seclusion, isolation, abuse, denying them their essential needs, care, and good living and poor protection.
So as you said, it is very crucial that the persons who are having mental illness, they should also enjoy the rights, equal rights as the other people enjoy. But in fact, we find that many cases it is that there are violations of human rights. As you said, there are seclusion. The patients are the patients with mental illness that are put under chains, or they are denied the basic rights. Living conditions are not good. They are secluded. So we say that abuse, isolation, stigmatization, all these things are there. Now there is also physical restraint and physical harm. And torture also happens to them. So, in addition to all this, the society's and the community's attitude is also negative towards these persons who are having mental illness. So here, I'd like to just point out here that this stigma and the misconception that are available with regard to mental illness. So, can you tell us, Professor Sarma, how do these affect the stigma and the misconception that are there in the society towards the persons who are having mental illness? How do these affect the rights of persons, such persons?
You are right. In addition to the various discriminations and abuse, stigma is another important element for the neglect of these patients by the society. There is now abundant evidence regarding inequality in the health status, both nationally and globally, as a result of socio-economic and political factors. Disparities are widespread all over the world, but the regional differences in the discrimination of resources, delivery, and quality of mental care are also well known. Health status has been linked with social class. There is both what we call as a social inequity and social inequality. Social equity is related to the issues of justice and fair chance, where social inequality is related to an unequal distribution of resources. Because of this lack of clarity, the right of health at the national level is often not specified in identifiable and legally binding obligation. To overcome this limitations or controversy, it has been proposed to include 4 agreed principles of international human rights legislation, namely the dignity to the person, equity to the person, participation, justice and fairness. Justice refers to the ability to claim health rights and seek redressal of their civil, social and political rights when there is a violation.
So this means that the persons with mental illness, so in that case the civil rights, the social rights, the economic, political rights, all these are violated. So we can say that the civil rights, political, educational, economic, cultural and social rights, all these are violated. Now when we talk about the treatment of such persons, we talk about the rights there. Like for example, just now you said about the dignity, the equity. So when we talk about the treatment of such persons, in that field, how these rights are violated there?
Now, first I would just like to, if you make, to protect those rights, if you make a legislation, yes, legislations are necessary to provide equity, participation and justice. But there is a catch. Most human rights are negative because societies enjoin upon them in interfering with them so they can be protected by law.
Okay.
Health is a positive right. Hence, it is the responsibility of the society to confer benefits by promoting the health.
Okay.
The right is not enforceable by law. Rather, it places obligation on society that none could hope to meet.
Okay.
Not only in India, but any part of the world. The linking of rights to obligation is an interesting development in the modern times.
Okay. Okay.
There has been a considerable international concern about the human rights of mental patients. The present criteria of the use of psychiatry for political purposes is a proper but predictable response to Western society, which is not in India. Legislation regarding improvement of mental health care facilities and discrimination against mentally ill in various walks of life are helpful. Historically, psychiatry has been closely interlinked with the legal system. Though the goals and approaches of the two disciplines appear to be different in direction, the rule of law, in particular, walk of life, are generally intended to apply to normal individuals who have a normal mind. When need is extended for a different rule, for abnormal point, the problems becomes more complex.
Okay. Okay. So we talked about the rights of persons with mental illness. Now, as you said, we also need the legislation with regard to this to ensure the rights of persons having mental illness. Legislation or having laws is a must. Okay. So that really goes a long way in ensuring the rights of such persons. Okay. Now, when we talk about the legislation, why do we need legislation? There are a few reasons for this that we can see here, that people with mental illness are vulnerable. Okay, so they cannot stand up for their own rights. So the law or the legislation that we have that ensures, that works towards ensuring that such people have their rights. And it also, like, necessary and appropriate laws will help ensure the rights of such persons. It will further prevent the discrimination, that stigma and discrimination of the society and the community that we talked about. It will also, the laws will also ensure that it prevents discrimination. It also ensures proper care and treatment for such persons. And finally, it also helps in preventing the society's stigma and the misconception regarding this. Now, can you tell us, Professor Sarma, how these are taken care of and what are the laws that we have in this regard?
First, I would like to say that before we, make the law, we have to ask a very fundamental question: is there a need to make a modified or separate rule for mentally abnormal person?
Okay.
If yes, give justification that why this law is necessary. Second, if the answer to the above question is affirmative, then what should be the precise criteria for determining and defining mental abnormality, with reference to the particular areas of legislation under consideration. Secondly, how the law is going to be benefited to the patient, to the family members, to the psychiatric institutions where they are giving treatment, the medical profession, the society, whether such a law is framed and whether this law will not further stigmatize the patients.
Okay.
So that we have to keep in mind.
Okay. Now, mental illness has been included in the WHO's list of non-communicable diseases in 2011. So, what do you have? This has significant implication for the mental health policy. So, what do you have to say on this?
When we make a law, whether the person, we have to say that, it involves the civil rights. Civil rights include that related to the competency to consent.
Okay.
When a consent is one word in the legal term which comes in every walk of life, whether we make a valid will, whether to make one's own property, whether ability to make the will which can have consequences of his decision, matters related to marriage, the matters related to voting rights, because, for example, in India, those who are mentally sick, severe, they are denied the voting rights.
Okay.
And other issues which are linked with these civil rights. Mental health legislation also includes provisions concerned with the restraint and protection of individual. Sometimes if the person is not willing to get treatment, we can by law enforce the person to be admitted in the hospital. And thus his individual liberty is denied. And sometimes this law is abused.
Okay. So when we talk about the persons with mental illness and the service and care that should be provided to them, and we also talk about the legislation and laws with regard to this, this becomes prominent that effective and efficient mental health care and services are essential. This further assumes importance given the fact that mental disorders are important risk factors for other diseases such as HIV, cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, etc., and also intentional and unintentional injury. So, what are the different, when we discuss about the different types of care and services available with regard to providing mental health care, we also have this NMHP program, National Mental Health Program. So, can you throw some light on this?
You mentioned about the inclusion by WHO and also the United Nations about 2 years back, to include the mental health as a part of the non-communicable diseases.
Yeah.
And non-communicable diseases, as you mentioned, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, cancer, and other things. Now, that is a positive step. And it will help the mental health because as I said, the mental health is a part of health and not apart from the health.
Yes.
So that will bring closer to the health system. Regarding the mental health and behavioral disorders, which are becoming more common among children, which is actually the new phenomena, and which are seen that 5 of the 10 leading causes of disability, which cause disability worldwide in what we call a daily or disease-adjusted life years, are psychiatric conditions.
DALY, yeah.
Which is quite a huge burden. Further, mental and physical health are interwoven. They are not separated. They said the treatment gap for mental disorder is enormous, and are based on expense. But fortunately, mental treatment is not based on expensive technology. For example, in cardiovascular diseases and cancer, the expensive technology is used. So it is affordable, and it can be extended to even to the poor masses at a large level with minimum resources. What is needed is a new synergy in delivering this mental health care at all levels. And mental health protection, the prevention and recovery. It is not just a treatment alone. You ask about mental health program.
Yeah.
Now, a national mental health program is a national plan of action that includes the broad and specific lines of action required at all sectors involved to give effect to the policy. First we develop a policy, then we have a planning, and then we have program. So they are interlinked. It describes actions aimed at achievement of the objectives which we have identified in the policy at a national level. A national mental health policy should define the vision for the future of mental health population in India and should incorporate all the elements which I have identified. The vision is to be provide accessible, affordable, and appropriate treatment. This is very important that people have services, but they will be the city, not in the rural area. Sometimes we put the locations which is not easily accessible. So accessible, availability and affordability, which people can afford. So all these elements are necessary of the mental health plan. And for that, and also important, it should not be linked because, for example, in India, in other countries, the focus is mostly on the adult population. Both the children and the older population are neglected. The facilities for them are minimum. And that aspect has also to be included when we make a good mental health program.
Under National Mental Health Program, we also have the district mental health programs, and it has been found that in the where this policy, this facility is there, the mental awareness about mental health is significantly higher in the DMHP districts compared to the non-DMHP districts. So finally, after discussing the rights, laws and policies related to the mental illness, let us discuss about the future scope of the mental health services that we have in our country. So basically we can focus here mainly on three things, that is development of skilled human resources, increasing financial resources and more community awareness and sensitization. WHO has pointed out 5 key barriers to increasing mental health services availability. These are absence of mental health from public health agenda and implication for funding, the current organization of mental health services, lack of integration within primary care, inadequate human resources for mental health, and lack of public mental health leadership. These are the, like WHO has said, that these are the barriers when we are talking about implementing mental health service policies and this thing. So how do you see these in the context of India?
You know, like as you said, the National Mental Health Program has elements 3 at primary healthcare level, the district mental health care level, and the tertiary health care.
Yes.
We have about 50 mental hospitals in the country. We have psychiatric facilities in all the 650 districts in India. And the DMNSP, about which you are talking, District Mental Health Program, is about the district.
Yes.
But as you know, the strength of the chain is determined by the weakness of the smallest link.
Yeah.
So we have to see that all the links are strong
Strengthened,
and there is no weakness. So primary health care is important, district mental health care is important,
Okay.
district mental, the tertiary mental health care is important, and it is only the tertiary mental health care at district which will enable us, because the infrastructure, we will be able to develop the educate manpower.
So we have to address all the sectors. Okay. Now, government must help people live longer and happier lives. As Michael Bloomberg, the philanthropist, politician and environmentalist who has recently visited Mumbai, said, and I quote, "If helping people to live longer, happier lives is not the purpose of government, then I don't know what is." So we can see here that economic development, material growth, prosperity are fine. But to enjoy all this, being healthy and having good mental health is most important. So today we discussed the mental health services in India, and in this context we discussed about the laws available for the people with mental illness, and we also discussed that the future of mental health care and services in the context of India. Starting from the budgetary allocation to training the manpower, there has to be an all-out effort to address the issues of persons with mental illness. This will ensure the protection of their human rights and they can live a dignified life in the society. So thank you, Professor Sarma, for joining us today.